Hello everyone, this is RaySpace, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Real Solar System and Realism Overhaul. Though, as far as Realism Overhaul is concerned, the stuff I'm looking at is certainly pushing it. I'm the one that has configured them for Realism Overhaul, and in fact, the main purpose of this video is to introduce an updated version of my Realism Overhaul configurations for Far Future Technologies, Nertea's mod that introduces advanced engines and stuff like that. I had previously taken a look at advanced engines from KSP Interstellar and decided how to use them best, and I'm beginning that process with Nertea's mod with FFT, and I first had to make some adjustments to the engines because I discovered a few things that I wanted to tweak, and also it's important to have Pekka's Warp Thrust mod available on them, so I've added Warp Thrust to them, hopefully somewhere. There it is, see, Warp Thrust. So that allows us to use these engines in time warp, as I've shown with the KSP Interstellar engines. And so if you take the configuration that I put in the video description, that should work. If it doesn't work, please do tell me. So that is the general idea. One positive thing about Nertea's mod is that the engines look great. One reason for that is because one person that came up with the art style for it, Nertea, and so they all have a uniform art style, as opposed to KSP Interstellar, which is the work of a lot of different people who are credited. There is a long list of credits for the models that go into KSP Interstellar, and a lot of people contributed code for KSP Interstellar as well. So it is a very complicated thing. There are positives, though, in that because there's a varied art style there, you can make a varied array of different ships, whereas a lot of these might look very similar in color, right? If you have a lot of this sort of tone to it, you end up having similar looking stuff, potentially. So there is that aspect of it. But on the whole, these are obviously more intricate and well done models. There are a few things, like with this Hammer Tong inertial confinement fusion engine. The inertial confinement fusion engine in KSP Interstellar is actually the Daedalus, and the Daedalus actually looks like the design of the Daedalus. The inertial confinement fusion engine is actually a thing that somebody designed, and the model that's in KSP Interstellar is the actual design of the Daedalus inertial confinement fusion engine. I don't know what this is based on in particular, but that one at least has that going for it. This one worries me because the center portion is sort of floating. I guess it has some support back here, but it's not a lot of support. Anyway, so I don't know why it has the thing around it, but I guess that's the confinement part. I don't know. But yeah, sometimes the models make me wonder. But so I'll probably be mixing and matching is the point. There are some models in KSP Interstellar that aren't in Far Future. There are some types of engines that are there that aren't in here, like the nuclear light bulb. It's possible that those are in near future, but I'm not sure. So yeah, I'm probably going to be using both at the same time, but that's a hefty thing to do. Unfortunately, the Far Future Technologies mod, even though it has fewer parts than KSP Interstellar, is practically the same size as KSP Interstellar. So that's harsh. So I have to make room for these two huge mods, and I'll probably be trimming some parts out if I don't think I need them. But let me take a look at the changes that I've made to the parts, to the engines, and show you what I've done. So these are the ISPs, the original ISPs of the engines that come with Far Future, and I've made these changes to them. And there are a few reasons for this. First of all, I don't think you're going to use Fusion when it only gives you 1900 ISP. I understand this one, they tried to make it an aerospike so that it was a launch engine. I don't think that's super going to fly, but you can still do that. But if you're going to use Fusion, you're probably going to get much better ISP than 1900, one would hope. Same with the nuclear pulse engine, which is effectively the Orion engine. 2900 is a little bit underwhelming, so I'll show you where I got these numbers from. I did get them from someplace. Same with the nuclear saltwater, that was a little bit underdoing it. Magneto-inertial fusion is fine at 5,000. That's about the same as it has in KSP Interstellar. These are all physical things that have some analysis behind them, by the way. It's not obvious. People think that if it's futuristic, well, then you can just make up a number and it'll be fine. Well, there's a lack of precision, but we do know how much energy a lot of these things would actually give off with some analysis. And in some cases, these are designed things that we know the upper bounds for, but we don't know what we can get efficiently. So we know what 100% efficiency with them would be, but then how much do you cut that down for realism? Are you only going to get 50% efficiency or 60% or what? That's where the question mark is. And also, how heavy does it need to be with all the safety features and stuff like that? The mass that you need to produce a given amount of thrust is a big question mark. So the one thing that is sort of certain is the absolute maximum ISP that you can get out of it. So I've tweaked those a little bit. This mirror cell fusion I've knocked down a little bit. The fission fragment just, I don't think, can get 350,000 seconds of ISP, even if it's after burning. It's sort of, yeah. I do want to have a delineation between the fission and fusion stuff to make the fusion a little bit more prominent and set it apart from the fission stuff. And antimatter, actually 2.5 million is a little bit underdoing it for antimatter. So where do I get these numbers from? Well, there is a website that I would like to introduce people to if they are interested in doing futuristic things. This is an important website for you to know, and that is Atomic Rockets. And this has a great deal of information in it about futuristic systems. It is based on sci-fi, and a lot of it is space war and stuff like that. But we're looking at the engine section here and engine list. And here it has plenty of information, including a handy chart here, which shows you about what kind of specific impulses you can get and thrust to weight ratios, what range those will be. So pulsed fusion here, continuous fusion, pulsed fission, laser or solar thermal rockets, thermal fission, chemical rockets down here, electrical thermal rockets, electrostatic rockets, etc. So we have all this, and then there's actual, as if it's not mostly speculative, but there's completely speculative things out there. So yeah, you've got these charts, and then you've got the table of different drives. So this is where I decide to tweak a few things. Some of these are real, like the Saturn V F1s, but most of these are not things that exist. But for instance, we have here the antimatter beam Frisbee, and here it says 10 million seconds of ISP, which if you're releasing energy from antimatter is probably what you're going to get, at least one would hope. So if we turn back to the chart, the fact that it was 2.5 million, and this was actually called Frisbee, so it's based on the same one. There's an antimatter Frisbee, so I just put in the number that we have on Atomic Rockets. I feel like that's fair. It is a big jump from the other engines, but it's antimatter. So I tended to bump up the antimatter things, and this is a Z-pinch fusion. I accepted a somewhat lesser specific impulse than it has here for that, but there's the saltwater Zubrin engine, so that's a nuclear saltwater engine. Here it says 8,000. Here is another variant at 6,728. So when we take a look at this chart, I wasn't satisfied with 3,850. I put it to the 6,728, and so forth. So I've made those changes in the configuration. I've also added Pekka's plugin to them. So you'll have to download Pekka's plugin from the GitHub, and I'll link that in the video description. And I've also tweaked the nodes on certain tanks that weren't working before. So those are the changes I've made to the mod. But it seems prudent for me to at least test that the warp thrust thing works. And so let me make sure that, let me put together a ship that has the right propellants, take it outside, and see if the thrust is going to work in time warp, which is important for the more efficient engines. Otherwise, if it's an inefficient engine, you're gonna run out of the fuel quickly enough that you don't really care about that. Alright, we are here. We've got some reaction wheels here, and I guess that's enough to make things work out for us. I've got the radiators from KSP Interstellar. I don't know which mod has the radiators that would normally work with FFT. I've got system heat in here, but I didn't see its radiators if it has them. But anyway, we are turning, and we have an appropriate amount to delta V given the engine. That's 61,000, and this is the Heinlein nuclear saltwater rocket engine. So it's the one that I made have 6,000, and oh, that throttle isn't working. 6,700 there. Now, one thing I don't think FFT does is prevent you from aiming the thrust at the planet. That's a nifty thing that KSP Interstellar does when you have an engine like this, which is problematic in that respect. Now we have a system temperature that's getting a little bit hot already, even though I'm not at full thrust. Oh right, that thrust's not working. Now we're way above the system temperature, even though I'm using the best radiators. And it shuts down at 4,000, it would seem. And then it no longer has anything. Well, we'll have to let it cool down. But I don't think it's working with the radiators exactly right, so I'll need to get better radiators. I would like to run at low thrust and see if we can use it during time warp. Oh, it's producing a little thrust. Let's see how long it can do that. Okay, can it do it during time warp is all I want. Yes, it can. So Pekka's mod is working with it, so the plugin is allowing us to use thrust during time warp. But it doesn't actually count the temperature during time warp while we're doing this. So that's a bit of a cheat. So we can overcome the temperature limitation. See, it stops increasing the engine system temperature while we're in time warp. Well, I mean, of course, it was not meant to keep track of that. So we can get around that situation, even though we're not supposed to. But, you know, that's a peculiar thing to FFT. I don't know if Pekka wants to deal with that or not, or how difficult that will be. So I'm not going to require that. You all should be on your best behavior using this properly and make sure that you have enough radiators, okay? That's all I have to say. Oh, the forward portion is from KSP Interstellar, by the way. It's part of its warp ship. Okay, yes. Working as expected. So anyway, with this high over the Earth, I'll wrap it up here. So there'll be the configuration in the video description. There will be Pekka's mod link for the plugin, and there will also be the link to Atomic Rockets, the website, so that you can take a look at that if you haven't familiarized yourself with that wonderful website already. And with that, I'll say thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.